When my daughters were both young, they played soccer. They would don their cleats, long socks, and soccer jerseys and spend Saturday mornings on the field with their friends. The competition grew fierce as my oldest daughter moved into competitive and high school leagues, and I was amazed at how the girls would barrel across the field and wince a little as my daughter stood fearless in the goalie box, holding fast as the defenders came rushing toward her, headlong. She'd hunch down, spread her arms out, and try to block the ball from breaking the threshold. And more than once, I, as a mom, who was a little weary, watched a determined forward slam into her shoulder and she toppled to the ground. When I think about organizational growth, that's what I see. Sometimes when organizations are new or when teams are trying to reach their goal, we knock each other over. Sometimes we have pointy elbows. And sometimes without meaning, we kick each other in the shins and we leave bruises. Sometimes, as leaders, we fall down. On today's episodes, we're going to talk about trust and explore the 5 ways to build trust in your organization. So here are a few lessons in leadership, from the soccer field to the boardroom. Grab your coffee and let's get started. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, danitacummins.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. Conflict will happen. As humans, we strive to work together for a common goal. Most days, anyway. Conflict is especially present when we're trying to create something new or do something that has never been done before. That can only be done in an environment that breeds trust. Trust is more important than goals or revenue margins. And as leaders, it is so important for us to create an environment where trust can grow. Trust is the cornerstone of every single organization. It's rooted in one person's expectations of and vulnerability to the actions of another. Without it, the foundation of any team, any business, or any organization will falter. When we get frustrated at work or with our team, we might struggle to see that the foundation for the frustration often stems from a lack of trust. Have you been there? I have. There are days when I have come home from work or I've had to get up from my desk and walk outside and get some sunshine and was just overwhelmed with this feeling of frustration. I couldn't exactly just put my finger on it. But over time, I've learned that it really is a lack of trust. Trust includes specific core elements for each one of us. Sometimes it's hard to define. I went to a leadership summit at the Army Management Staff College for about a month, and I spent that time surrounded by leaders from all over the world who worked and served in the Army. And one day we got into this discussion about trust, and it was really hard for the team of leaders, very academically, gifted people who had served in lots of different experiences, attorneys and warriors and leadership professionals who actually studied the discipline of leadership. It was very difficult for us to come to a common understanding or definition of trust. Respect, credibility, and intimacy are the most common elements of trust, and you can check that out if you look up a trust equation and do a bunch of research on that if you want to, or if you have already in your leadership journey. I challenge you to check that out. But those are the 3 most common: respect, credibility, and intimacy that we see when we want to create an environment where trust thrives. But it still seems to be difficult to understand how you actually do that. So I'm going to give you 5 ways to build trust in your organization. And I'm going to share some tips and tools that I have found that make it easy for me to understand And it's a really good checklist as a leader when I start to see maybe tension or when I myself am struggling with different things. I can go back and I can look at these different areas and I can ask, are they missing? Is something else going on here? And get to the root of why I or my team is maybe frustrated. So the first one is listen with intention. We say that all the time, right? Listen, 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 listen. But I think that we maybe have discounted the value of listening as leaders. Your team comprises unique individuals with their own viewpoints and ideas, right? Ask them to share their opinions. And when they do, we should genuinely listen. That's what people expect us to do. But we need to strive to hear the unsaid words. I talk about it being the action of listening to the words behind the words, because there are areas of frustration or confusion that are there that cloud their productivity and their focus. They just are. It's like parenting. We have these opportunities to connect with people daily. And as leaders, that's what we're entrusted to do, right? We're entrusted with the care and safekeeping of others. So I would encourage you, if you don't already have a battle rhythm or a plan for you to do this, to set aside some time in meetings for employees to discuss their work experience and their feelings. As a leader, you're responsible for the environment and the culture you create. And so when you do that, be ready to listen to the positive and the negative feedback. Be ready to try to listen or hear the words behind the words, even when you don't 100% agree. Don't try to solve the problem. You don't have to solve every problem immediately or every day. Just listen and let them explore their feelings and put things on the table. That will add great value to your trust equation that you're trying to build. The second one is solicit feedback. Sometimes we don't want to do this as leaders because we're really busy and we're trying to get from one to the other. And most people in the environment or on the team might not know all the things that we know or see all the things that we see. And so sometimes it's easier to just cut out all the voices and just focus on the 3 things that we need to do that day. I get it. But I would encourage you to share and solicit feedback in a way that invites collaboration with your team. Research shows that only 10% of employees are satisfied with their yearly feedback requests, and 64% want to provide feedback or they want a way to provide feedback at any time. That's a lot, 64%. 64% of our team members are saying, hey, I have something to say, or I have an idea, or I have an opportunity or a way this might be able to be done differently or better. But they, for whatever reason, don't feel like their voices are heard. Try to create regular instances when you can give and receive feedback. And if changes are applied within the organization's friend, this is so important. You have got to promptly communicate the results with your team, and you have to work together to determine what actions you can take to improve these experiences or the situations in the workplace. You just do. It's like anything that is in the dark is going to grow and get moldy. This is a super pizza analogy for you for my teenagers. If you take your pizza and you stick it under your bed, it's going to grow mold and it's going to be super gross and it's going to start to smell, right? That's just the reality of how things are. So if there's something going on or there's a challenge or bad news is coming, you have to downsize, right? Which that's what we have to do as leaders. We have to make decisions. We have to realign resources sometimes. We have to close departments sometimes. Like those are things that we really have to do. Then you need to be able to face those head on. Okay. And make sure that you are in a place where you can share that with a team lovingly, but transparently so that they can prepare. So once the change is in place and you've solicited that feedback and you've shared with them and you've given them an opportunity to share their own experiences, then you rinse and repeat because growth is not a one-time event, right? And it makes our teams better. And in that process, that rinse and repeat process, people do genuinely start to see that, wow, this is okay. It's okay that we're going through hard stuff. It's okay that they don't actually know the answers either, but they're here and they're not going anywhere. My greatest value whenever I was kind of growing up in my leadership journey and my military journey, the leaders and the supervisors that I valued the most were the ones who participated in helping me solve that active problem, right? If I could get someone who would sit down next to me who was in the trenches, and I didn't need them there all the time. I don't need you every single day. But if I had a leader who was willing to get their hands dirty with me, to come and sit and for me to see what was going on or for me to be able to show them what was going on. The late nights when the commander came in on the mid shift and he sat with us at 2:00 in the morning and he understood the complexity of what we were navigating. Those were the leaders that I respected the most. Those were the ones that I quite literally would have followed anywhere. So it's important. The third one is to show your appreciation. We say this all the time, but I think sometimes we dismiss it or we kind of forget that there are 101 ways to appreciate your team members. And money, quite frankly, is not always the motivator. So it's vital to recognize your team in regular, real-time, scenarios. Some people are going to prefer public praise, which we know, and others are going to prefer quiet conversation. You can send thank you cards or notes of encouragement or other tangible rewards like bonuses and employee awards, of course. But approximately 90% of employees who receive credit from their boss report high trust in that individual. Now, if you have 100 people on your team, it probably is really hard for you to write a handwritten note to every single one of them. Maybe not. I don't know. I always appreciated getting a handwritten birthday card from the SES or someone who was giving me feedback that day. But there are 101 ways that you can show appreciation. It doesn't always have to be money. And quite frankly, most people don't want it. So strive to do that every week or every month, however your battle rhythm looks best for you. The fourth thing is to create psychological safety. So being transparent with your team is critical to creating an environment of trust. Authors Dr. Karolin Helbig and Minette explain 5 plays that each person can use to create the conditions for psychological safety in their organizations in their book, The Psychological Safety Playbook. And here's a quote that Dr. Helbig shared when they came on the podcast last year. She said, "We're trained in the old paradigm that leaders don't show vulnerability and that showing vulnerability is weakness and is punished. But leaders who master the courage to take this scary first step are more aligned with who they are. They feel more effective as leaders, and people follow them because they are now in touch with who they are as human beings. We are human beings. We are not robots. Nobody wants to work for a robot, right? And so as leaders, we should strive to create an environment that embraces learning and establish conditions for growth and innovation, all those things. But our teams are only going to be able to face those scenarios and overcome the complex challenges of every day, personally and professionally, if we create an environment of psychological safety. So it's not inherently known to us. It's not something that we maybe know how to do right off the bat. Some people are probably better at it than others. But I would encourage you as a leader, if you don't want to know what psychological safety is, definitely get their book or do some research or watch some YouTube videos. There's a ton of content out there, just really good. It tells you what psychological safety is and isn't. It's just really great. But like emotional intelligence, psychological safety is one of those key elements for leadership and growth. So make sure you do that, or you're striving to do that for as much as you can. And then number 5 is to empower your team. We say it all the time. Empowerment is this common theme today. Leaders must strive to create a culture where team members are encouraged to be empowered, right? But what does that actually mean? It means that they should be in a place where they can make decisions, where they understand how to delegate authority, and they feel equipped to solve problems within their scope of practice, right? By creating an environment where team members can seek new solutions, try different approaches, and collaborate together, we allow innovation and creativity to thrive. In the book, Leadership at 100 Feet, Growing Leaders in High-Performance Teams, Major General retired Chad Franks explains how discipline enabled his team of special operations helicopter pilots to take calculated risks. Their team members were empowered and required to make split decisions that affected the lives of many. And in his book, he quotes, "Knowing where the edges of the boundaries are allows one to make risk-based decisions on whether to go beyond those boundaries in a deliberate manner." Your team might not be flying helicopters into hostile areas, but you can set the conditions for them to push the limits. Be intentional about creating disciplined approaches to agility, growth, and risk reduction. Give your team the freedom and the boundaries to explore opportunities, and you will be amazed at how your organizations can thrive. As I strive to lead teams and organizations, I continue to remember one foundational truth. Don't hurt their hearts, okay? The mission is critical, yes. The drive, the goal, the impact, those are all important, but not at the expense of others or their emotional well-being. We talk a lot about trust and leadership. We encourage emotional intelligence and empathy and grace, but all of those things rely on how we heal and protect the human heart. The lesson is the same, whether it's in ministry or corporate America or at work on the battlefield. Hearts matter. And as leaders, we are entrusted to care for and to keep them, no matter what. In 2018, I started a nonprofit. It was created from the ground up, and it has been quite a wild ride. There were days when I became frustrated. I cried 1,000 tears and prayed just as many prayers. Like every team, we had and continue to have our own challenges. At times, we've even had pointy elbows. We don't always know exactly where the goal line is. We fumble the ball, run in and out of bounds, and sometimes we knock each other over. But we strive to create an environment of trust. Teams can't function without it. It's the most foundational block for everything that we do, and it should be rooted in love and grace. Leadership is a complex endeavor. I get it. When we interact with others, this thing called the ladder of inference starts to show up, and we make these assumptions. We judge each other by what we perceive the other person's intentions are, and we struggle to manage our own emotions and self-awareness while we're still trying to become this emotional barometer for everyone else in the room. And we engage our teams and strive to understand their nonverbal cues and their emotional experiences and how that affects the team. It can be exhausting. Leadership, while a daunting adventure, carries its own weight. So I would encourage you to respect it. We must allow our teams time to process and grieve and explore our own emotions and concerns. That's what we have to do. We have to make space for that as leaders. And we must be courageous enough to hold space for them. And when we do that, when we hold space, trust is born. It grows. It strengthens like faith. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it will be. Today, we're all searching for trust. I don't know about you, but I'm looking for it more and more with each passing day. It's imperative that we as leaders create an environment where people are seen, where hearts are protected, and where trust is revered. And in that effort, I promise that you will see lasting change. Hey friends, thanks for listening to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I am super excited about this spring and all the things that we're going to get to do. If you haven't yet decided to follow the Entrusted to Lead newsletter, sign up for that. Go to danitacummins.com and subscribe. That way you get all the latest updates on the book launch and everything else that we'll be doing this spring. We'll be back next month with some amazing interviews from a few leaders as we're continuing to have great conversations with them with their new books that they're writing and just some really great conversations. So I hope you find that to be of great value. And always, if you're interested in joining me on the podcast, pop over to the link in the website and fill out the guest form. I'd love to have you on the show. So I hope that you have an amazing day. I'll see you later. Bye.